Hi everyone, Fran here at New Testament Explained. Today's video is going to be analysing divisions over who Jesus is and the unbelief of the Jewish leaders that are found in John's Gospel. These form part of Anthology 6 on the Edexcel A-Level Religious Studies course and is the third passage we're going to look at out of 9. As always, with these passages, what we are looking at is what is causing the disagreement that Jesus gets into. Is it law of Moses? Is it controversies surrounding the Sabbath? Or is it issues to do with temple cleansing? We also look at key themes that emerge in these instances where Jesus is in conflict. And namely, we look at Christology, blasphemy, threat to power, and political expediency. So just a little bit of context on divisions over who Jesus is and the unbelief of the Jewish leaders. Jesus starts off in John's Gospel with a large and loyal following. Many of these people had previously followed John the Baptist, which has been mentioned in an earlier video. These disciples recognised Jesus as the Messiah. However, in John 6, there is somewhat of a crisis when Jesus preaches controversial I am sayings and presents himself as superior to Moses. And from that we get ideas of heating his flesh and blood in the Eucharist. Now what Culpeper in particular has argued is that at this point many of the followers defect from Jesus. They stop following him because they can't accept his quite hard teachings and that they are quite extreme in what he is saying. And you can use John 6:66 to explore that further. This leaves Jesus then with his core 12 disciples. And what the passage we're going to look at does is kind of explores divisions about the identity of Jesus, and it will end with Jewish leaders having their own discussions about what they think. So the division over who Jesus is will run over 2 slides in this video. Where we're going to start is in the second paragraph, where Jesus makes quite a strong Christological statement in saying, I am not here on my own authority, but he who sent me is true. You do not know him, but I know him because I am from him and he sent me. Without naming God explicitly, this is a reference to Jesus being from God and sent by God. So that is a Christological statement and fits into the theme of Christology in this topic. What is quite interesting, again, I've said this a few times if you've watched a few of these Anthology 6 videos now, is that you can make references back to John's prologue and the idea of the Logos and the idea of incarnation, because Jesus says, I am from him. And that echoes ideas in the prologue, so there's strong parallels between the two there. Interestingly, we also get an almost undertone of threat to power here, because it says you do not know him. It's quite accusationary, it's quite critical, so there is that sort of accusation that you don't know who God is, which again a listener could perceive as a threat to their power. Moving on in the passage, we get no one laid a hand on him because his hour had not come. And this is quite interesting when looking at conflict. It gives the sense that Jesus has a degree of control in how the conflict escalates. And when we look at broader debates on the historical accuracy of this passage or passages surrounding conflict, this could definitely be used to question or debate whether there is a broader theological purpose in these passages. Later on in the final paragraph on this page, we get then the chief priests and the Pharisees sent temple guards to arrest him. So this would fit under the theme of threat to power, religious authorities feeling threatened by Jesus and taking action against him. And possibly most interesting on this page, we get the phrase, where I am, you cannot come. Now, to perhaps a modern reader, to a Christian reader with hindsight as to what happens to Jesus, that could be seen as a a reference to what will happen in terms of the resurrection and ascension. But what may have been understood at the time by that sentence is something perhaps a lot more, I don't know what the word is. So it just makes sense in terms of what is going on more broadly. So as we will learn on the next slide, this passage actually takes place during the festival of Tabernacle, the Feast of Tabernacle. And what was expected during that festival is that you would go to the temple in Jerusalem for 7 days, and then for 8 days you would essentially scatter. The term's called diaspora, and the idea that you scatter out of Jerusalem as part of the festival. And what may have happened here is that the listeners heard Jesus say, "Where I am, you cannot come," and they just thought, oh, we're just going as part of the diaspora to a different location out of Jerusalem. But actually what Jesus is trying to say is something much more theologically significant about where he is going in terms of sort of eternal life and his resurrection and ascension. Finally, we get the sentence, "Will he go where our people live amongst the Greeks?" Sorry, actually, we can just link that back to what I have just said. The idea that people are not understanding what he's saying. They just think it's part of the festival, that he's going to scatter and live amongst the Greeks as part of the festival, when in fact it is saying a lot more than what people are understanding. This is the second part then of division over who Jesus is. It's interesting that it's only mentioned at this point in the passage, but we get on the last and greatest day of the festival. So again, this is part of the Feast of Tabernacle, and what this then indicates about this passage is that there is a degree of political expediency when it comes to the key themes that we are looking at. Religious authorities in general, will have wanted to react against Jesus and to take action, because it is a time of year where there are lots of pilgrims in Jerusalem attending the temple, and Jesus will evidently have the potential to incite more people to act in a way that doesn't comply with law and order, act disobediently. So you can say in this passage, even though it's not mentioned until later on actually explicitly, that there is a theme of political expediency in this passage. And then Jesus says, "Let anyone who is thirsty come to me and drink. Whoever believes in me, as scriptures has said, rivers of living water will flow from within them." Again, what we've got here in terms of the context I mentioned earlier, that people were not necessarily comfortable with these sort of hard truths about Jesus, we kind of get this mention of those who are thirsty, come to me and drink. So again, we've got this continuation of quite bold statements that some people are defecting away from Jesus as a result of. And interestingly, the final paragraph tells us quite a lot really about key themes and the cause of conflict. We get the idea of what it means to be the Messiah. So again, this Bible passage is called Division Over Who Jesus Is, and it's kind of summarized in this paragraph that people are saying, how can he be the Messiah? He comes from Galilee. The scripture says he won't come from Galilee. He's going to come from King David's line. He's going to come from Bethlehem, and he doesn't seem to fit that criteria. Now, what you can do at this point is you can make references back to topic 1.1, prophecies regarding the Messiah, and you can raise Old Testament expectations of the Messiah. You can sort of link it back to the topic we have already studied. And what comes here is, again, this idea that conflict in this Bible passage seems to centre around Jewish laws, and whether Jesus complies with the laws, he meets the expectations of the laws, or whether he doesn't. So that would be, ultimately, it's quite subtle in this passage, I think. The topic of disagreement is all around Jewish laws. Then we get the unbelief of the Jewish leaders. It's quite a short passage, and what we get is this immediate sense of threat to power, in that we get the phrase, no one ever spoke the way he does, a sentence said by the guard to the Pharisees. And again, it's kind of raising this notion in terms of how people are reacting to Jesus, and it's also demonstrating that even the guard feels like the Pharisees should be reacting, that they should feel threatened by saying no one's ever spoken the way this man does. And it kind of just highlights, not only do the Pharisees show that they feel threatened across the passages in Anthology 6, but other people more broadly are looking at the situation and feel like they should feel threatened almost. Towards the end of this passage then we get Nicodemus, who has gone to Jesus earlier and kind of comes back to the Pharisees and says, does our law condemn a man without first hearing him to find out what he has been doing? And again, we get this notion of threat, that the Pharisees will feel threatened by Jesus, that people are starting to challenge the Pharisees as a result of Jesus. But we also get, again, this idea that the cause of disagreement is the law of Moses. That is what is causing this division. The fact that even Nicodemus is now going to the Pharisees and challenging them on the law of Moses. So it's kind of expanding beyond Jesus in terms of those starting to confront Pharisees. So it's quite interesting that we've kind of got a consistent cause of disagreement in this passage, it being Jewish laws, the law of Moses, but we've also got quite a strong notion of Pharisees feeling threatened or experiencing things that you would expect to make them feel threatened. And then finally what we get is, are you from Galilee too? Look into it and you will find that a prophet does not come out of Galilee. So again, it's just another reference to Old Testament expectations regarding the Messiah, which you can link to topic 1.1, and the idea that people are reading Jewish laws, but it is still, that alone doesn't seem to be sufficient because they are missing the point of who Jesus is, and they are missing what Jesus is trying to tell them. That marks the end of the Bible passage, the third Bible passage out of 9 for Anthology 6, and what we've got out of that is the idea that conflict is caused by the law of Moses in this passage, and that quite a few of the key themes do emerge. We get ideas of Christology, we get quite a strong sense of threat to power in this passage, and we also get political expediency as well, due to this passage taking place during the festival of the Feast of the Tabernacle. As always, thank you for watching. Make sure you're subscribed if not, and stay tuned for more videos on Anthology 6.